With civil, you're creating things for public use. You're working on really cool teams, creating these complex designs and making it real, being at the forefront of some of this digital adoption stuff.
On this episode of the RCN podcast, a construction technology expert, speaker, founder, and senior consultant of Erin Khan Consulting, Erin Khan.
It's just so exciting to be at the forefront of it. We had the ability to work with Boston Dynamics Spot Robot Dog. There's always resistance to change. We as an industry, we're working with things that are super risky all the time.
We're not yet to the point tons of universities are really deep in this.
Was a little shocking at the time is there's a lot of paper in construction.
If you surround yourself and you kind of gather awareness of what is out there, when you talk about issues, it might help you think of new things you didn't.
Those who are able to explain and communicate and convince truly believe in the change that they're making.
All right, welcome to another episode of the Reality Capture Network podcast. Excited to have Erin Khan on today. Thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Really happy to be here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you. You know, I like the fact, sometimes I get to talk with people I've never met before and kind of dig into their stories. And then other times it's like, hey, we've already engaged. We've had you at our conference. We've got to hear from you, speaking a bit. But I really like the podcast as an opportunity to unpack the story of the individual. And I love hearing all the way back because I think there's unique things we can get from people's stories of how they got into the industry or what inspired them and hearing some of their career journey. I think some of those are valuable lessons as we're continuing to talk about, hey, we need to inspire people to get in. So I think as we unpack that, it gives us some, value moving forward. So before we talk about what you do today or digging into the tech, take us back to what did you want to do for work when you grew up?
Yeah. Oh, man, such a good question. So basically, I had no idea really what I wanted to do. And I think I've been asked this before, how did you end up in construction? And reflecting back, it's just been a series of, I think, small experiences that have kind of built up into eventually getting to where I am today. But I think I just always had a natural curiosity about how things get put together. And then it also kind of helped that, my dad's an electrician, would always see him doing different projects around the house and being like, oh, I want to help with the extrusion or the construction today. Couldn't really say the word, but yeah, it was just exciting. So yeah, high school was really interesting for me, or middle through high school was, really interesting because I was into a lot of different things, but it was kind of funny because we did have woodshop and metal shop and an extra design course in middle school to explore, which I did. And reflecting back, it's wow, I was kind of that weird kid that was I want to do more of this hands-on stuff. But some of those things were pretty influential early on. But something that's also maybe a little surprising is I thought at one point that I might be going into the music industry. So spent 13 years doing piano, violin, singing, you name it. And I went into college undecided because I just didn't know if, exactly where I was going to go. So
I think that's a lot of people.
I just had absolutely no clue what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still don't have a good idea of what I want to be when I grow up.
Yeah, it's a good question to ask.
So yeah, I'm just kind of on the journey.
That's awesome. Yeah. Hey, I share the music piece. I got to tour in a rock band before I was I'm not making money, and then got into surveying. So,
man,
it's I think I've heard quite a few people actually in the industry that kind of thought music might be a route. But okay, so you get into college and you're undecided, and then what was your path kind of forward from there, where you then stepped into career?
Yeah, so first year in school, undecided in the liberal arts college at USC, tried a bunch of different things. So I really just experimented with like going to different classes, being in different clubs, and trying to see what really kind of sparked an interest, and realized that I kind of missed math. I kind of missed a little bit of the technical side. And I also was really drawn to something that would be done with teamwork, that would have a bigger purpose, that would have some sort of way of like serving the community, which eventually led me to civil engineering. So,
Yep.
so there's, of course, the technical aspect of engineering, but also with civil, you're creating things essentially for public use. You're working on really cool teams, creating these complex designs and making it real together. So that just kind of checked pretty much all those boxes.
That's awesome. Was there a first project, whether still in school or then, shortly after school, was there any like big projects that really sparked like passion for your industry moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm so glad you asked. So I had probably like one of the coolest internships to start out with. So it was USC Heritage Hall. So it's the museum, I guess, technically on campus that hosts all the Heisman trophies and a lot of the cool sports memorabilia. And I had the opportunity to be a project engineer intern at the time, working with the team on that building. So senior year of school, still in school, being able to renovate this historic building on campus, just kind of really sparked the whole passion. So like, wow, this is so cool. I get to be a piece of, be a part of the history with putting together a updated building for years to come. So that was one part of it. And then the second part of it, which was maybe a little shocking, I would say at the time, is, wow, there's a lot of paper in construction. There's a lot of paper. There's a lot of manual processes, napkin sketches, like struggling with digital adoption. But I didn't necessarily see that as a downside. I just saw it as another opportunity to make improvements. So quickly got passionate about digital drawing sets, and my entry with technology, construction technology, really was Bluebeam Review. So that was, the intern's duty is doing all the dock control. So if you get pretty good at Bluebeam, you're probably going to be in good shape. So that was just a really exciting piece. One, being part of that history on campus as a student still, and then two, being at the forefront of some of this digital adoption stuff with digital drawing sets. So well, I'm excited to hear more about.
So that was kind of the first piece of maybe innovation for you within construction, is realizing, wow, there's a lot of paper and manual processes, and yet you're entering at a time that you're also aware of technologies or maybe things that could improve. So what did some of your first real career roles look like? What were you doing?
So project engineer to begin with, as do many of us in construction. So for whatever reason, I ended up on a few historical projects, renovation projects. Somehow always was on them. Great experience with the building teams, learned a ton. And I also, with the first GC that I worked at, Morley Builders, had the opportunity to get a little bit of exposure in estimating as well as pre-construction, which was fantastic to just have that perspective early on in my career. And then eventually was in a specific IT, like kind of hybrid role for process improvements for operations. So I had been, with all of my projects, just super passionate about the tech, making better adoption of digital processes. So eventually ended up in like that dedicated role, in that IT process improvement role. So yeah, that was kind of like the first 6 years or so of my career, and then ended up at Suffolk Construction. So wanted to do more with technology, and Suffolk definitely was and is, I would say, leading the industry with a lot of innovative practices, best in class when it comes to technology adoption, and also investing in the right tech tools. So had a fantastic experience there, being able to just focus purely on operational tech, scaling and finding the right solutions, and working with different teams to solve real problems with tech.
That's awesome.
So yeah, those are some of my main roles.
Yeah, what would you say within that role? Because you got to focus on that for a bit of time, yeah?
Yeah, 4 years.
Yeah. What would you say were some of the highlights for you in that, within your time focusing on that, where you got to identify some type of technology or improve a process? What were some of the things that, if you were to look back at that time and say, hey, this was kind of a thing that really excited me that we got to do?
110%, like the team that I worked with there. So you guys know who you are if you ever tune into this. Shout out to, the first team there of directors. So it was just such a cool experience, like having, number one, like a diverse team, but also just like other experts who were geeking out about the same things I was geeking out about. Like, whoa, look at this solution. Like, it can capture all this data in, super fast, and it applies AI, and so really awesome having the just the energy and the mindset of amazing people on the team. So that was a true highlight. And if I think back to some of the projects, the other piece of it that's like super rewarding as well is seeing the work that we did at the beginning of everything, and really trying to figure out a way to like set up these processes to actually like truly work and create value and impact, and then seeing them grow over the course of a few years. And then, we reflect back 4 years later, oh, wow, we actually really did scale up some pretty solid solutions that are measurably driving value for the teams. Like, this is real change. This is where it happens. So I think just seeing the impact of, the initiatives over the course of the few years.
When you put the time into it and you actually see it, become adopted. I do have some more questions on that same topic. First would be, within your time, was there a specific technology that you'd say you look back and were excited most about, during that maybe wasn't adopted yet, that you guys were looking into or trying to, integrate or?
So there's so many.
Yes.
Like, wow, there's a lot of examples that come to mind. One that I'll pick on a little bit is robotics. So I want to say, with my experience, we had the ability to work with Boston Dynamics Spot Robot Dog pretty early. I do still think there's a little bit of a ways to go with getting to like fully autonomous robotics in construction, but it's just so exciting to be at the forefront of it. So like the moment when you're able to actually, operate this robot yourself and be involved in, like literally hands-on keyboard or hands-on controller, driving this thing around the construction site, it really makes it real for you in a way. Like, oh, like, wow, this is really where the future of the industry is headed. Give it a few more years to cook and bake and work out the kinks, and get to a place where it's, super sleek and easy, and easy for anybody to adopt and implement. Then we start to see this vision start coming together. So Yeah, that was a pretty cool experience
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, that is fun. It is cool. There are so many technologies out there that are going on, but to be so early in playing with things that are really not fully adopted yet, and to have a team of innovative people kind of brainstorm around like, where will this go? It's a very fun spot to be, even if it's not, fully adopted yet. And some people may initially put up a wall or something and say, yeah, that's not going to happen. But I think the innovative and forward-thinking people can see that future and say, no, it will. There's some changes that need to happen. It's not there yet, but you can envision the way that these tools will grow and be used on a bigger scale.
Definitely. I think one of the things too that we forget is that innovation's actually really hard.
Yeah.
It's super hard. So there's this whole like learning and exploration component that is super essential. And even if something doesn't bear fruit right away, it's really that continuous learning experience that is going to set the foundation for future innovation success. So you can't really cut out any of these steps.
Yeah.
So it's a long game. Innovation is truly a multi-year or more type of deal.
Well, and that hits a little bit on kind of where my next question was going to head, which is, I think there are a lot of companies that don't have an innovation team or department or a focus or so yet I think we see that growing more and more. I think that companies see the need, they see especially with the amount of change that is happening these last several years. But if you go to, the role you got to play in it, and maybe even some of what you see now, what would you say are some things that led to, success for that team or that role? What was it within that culture or that company that understood the benefit of it? Or, did you still run into a lot of challenges even as an internal team with, buy-in? Just maybe some around that.
Yeah, 100%. I think challenges and pushback with buy-in is always going to happen. So it's anywhere and everywhere in the industry, right? There's always resistance to change. Change is scary. I mean, and we as an industry too, like we're working with things that are super risky all the time. So introducing something that might switch up a process that is safe is scary.
Yeah.
So we're kind of historically trained to just stick with what we know. So yeah, there are challenges along the way, and no matter how great your innovation culture is or your team is with implementation, you're still gonna encounter those challenges, right? But what I think kind of helps is two things. So finding the right people to give you the grassroots support that you need. So going bottom up, but also getting the top down. So the leadership component is absolutely critical with steering the ship, going in the right direction, and then also bringing those key influencers, innovation champions along with you to kind of pull in some of those naysayers, if you will. Yeah,
definitely a fun balance. I like that you're already answering my questions, because my question was going to be, do you think that there's more challenge with leadership buy-in and funding and proving out use case, or more challenge with adoption and getting teams to implement or use? Because I think there is both, but I'm like, which one do you think is the bigger challenge in the industry today?
Yeah, it's such a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
And it's quite a spectrum in the industry. So we have a pretty good amount, I would say at this point, of leadership that is realizing, hey, this tech stuff is actually really important if I want to stay competitive with my business. And there is a good chunk of people in the field who are like, yeah, I want to get this done. I want to go home on time. I want to be extra safe. Let me use the tools and resources that are available to do that. I think it's probably a little bit tougher to find the right like grassroots support, the innovation champions, if you will. But once you find them, then you kind of have pretty much a gold mine of, good, good energy, positive momentum to help.
Yeah.
I had one other thought come to mind as well. Is with innovation teams, it also helps a lot if they come from the field side themselves. So sourcing your innovation
You've lived
team.
the problems.
Yeah, exactly. And those are the people who are most motivated to get the right tools, and I emphasize the right tools,
Yeah.
to operations because they've suffered, they've felt the pain themselves, they empathize. So
Yeah. No, that's a great point. And I think it's something that maybe if there are people listening that don't yet have an innovation department, it's like, hey, the best way to start is probably identify someone that's already on your team and start allotting some time for them, or maybe roll them into something like that. Because, going the opposite end where it's like someone who just loves technology, you could get lost in just cool tech and you want to implement everything, but you may have a hard time focusing down on like what the actual tool that will help, or so I think that's a great point to share.
Yeah. On that note too, I've found that it's not necessarily the most tech savvy people that will be the best at being in an innovation role. It's those who are able to explain and communicate and convince and truly believe in the change that they're making. So you can teach almost anybody, how to sharpen their tech skills, right? So that's at least my philosophy on it.
Yeah, that's true. So in a role like that, I'm curious too, how do you keep up with all the technology and or I would assume there's a bit of both, but I'd just love to hear your thoughts as well of if you are really focusing on finding all the new tech and like kind of figuring out process, or if it starts with just problem and trying to find something specifically to solve that, that issue.
Good question. So with the first piece there, like staying plugged in with the industry, finding new tech. So it's actually easier than people might think, but it's also, I guess, maybe hard to do in the industry, but it's just say yes when tech solutions reach out to talk with them, speak with them.
Yes, you can pitch me over
exactly.
and over. Yeah. Yeah.
So, like check your email, check your LinkedIn messages. You probably have a bunch of stuff that looks like spam. A good amount, it probably is spam, but there's a good amount that's not quite spam, right? So,
yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, if someone says, hey, like, can we just connect? Would love to show you my solution. It does X, Y, and Z. We think it would help you out a lot. Like, yeah, give them 15 minutes, 10 minutes, just a little bit of time to learn a little bit more. And that helps build the awareness. So, yeah, it's a funny question because the opportunities are out there, but I think a lot of us have been so desensitized, especially in the digital age with like robocallers or I can't even talk about like the email stuff that gets through spam, but
it's crazy.
If you can weed out, the stuff that's actually from legitimate companies, like take a couple minutes, just listen to them.
Yeah.
Worst case, you learned about something that's out there and maybe it's not 100% applicable to you and you move on with your day.
Yep.
Right. So yeah, just be a little bit more open. And then the second question was, I think, looking at the tech or looking at the problem.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So my take on this is we should try to avoid like shiny object syndrome. So if something seems super cool, wow, I can't believe it does X, Y, Z, and you're kind of blown away by it just from a very quick look, take another step back. And I always like to say, whatever you do, write down your business requirements somewhere. on paper, in a note, somewhere. Just jot it down, because if you get a solution that ultimately doesn't satisfy those business requirements, you're not driving value for the business, you're not actually solving a problem for team members out in the field, and you're just essentially wasting your time, money, resources. So I prefer to start with, let's actually look at the problem we're trying to solve.
Yep.
Map out specifically what we need, and then have that dictate the types of solutions that you're looking at.
Yeah. No, I think that's great. Yeah. I'm sure that there is a bit of both, right? Sometimes a technology may be able to improve a process that we didn't realize was like, hey, that's a real problem. But then there's probably easier low-hanging fruit where it's like, what are some of our biggest issues? And then go seeing if there's a technology that will solve it. So ideally, like you said, you're someone that would be in this role or in an innovation role where your goal is improvement is like you said, take the time, take the calls, understand the tech. Maybe you don't have an immediate fit, but if you surround yourself and you kind of gather awareness of what is out there, when you talk about issues, it might help you think of new things you didn't even realize really was an area that you wanted to improve yet. Yeah,
that was a good summary. Yeah.
Like, the guys with the tape measures out there, right, that don't know that a scanner exists. They wouldn't see it as a problem. They're like, no, right. we're really good. We have the best tape measure that exists, What technologies or trends excite you right now? There's been a lot that's been happening the last 10 years. What do you see happening now and in the coming couple years that you think is going to be impactful or that you're excited about?
Yeah, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention artificial intelligence. It's kind of been the buzzword.
Yep.
But beyond just cool AI stuff, I think it really comes down to data integrations and the data quality. So it's funny when I'm like, yeah, I'm excited for data integrations. It's not necessarily a technology per se, but it's one
of the biggest areas, for improvement, even though it's not new.
Right.
Yeah.
And it'll empower or allow us to unlock future technological capabilities if we're able to actually wrangle our data better. So, I just had an image of being at a rodeo and lassoing data.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Hey, that's great. Thanks for sharing.
I'll have to ask one of those AI image generators to do a...
We'll get you a lasso in your podcast trailer.
Visual for me. Yeah.
Perfect. It's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. We got to wrangle our data. And then we have so many point solutions and so many silos, and if we just connect it all, we'd be sitting on just something extraordinarily powerful.
Yeah.
And what I'm also excited for is learning and development solutions. So we have a huge problem in the industry. We have a lot of tenured professionals and people leaving the industry, more so than people coming in. So there's this big knowledge gap that, we're not transferring very well. And it turns out that it's a perfect use case for AI to pick up lessons learned, ingest a whole bunch of data, be able to put it in a translatable way that somebody who doesn't know anything about it can come in quickly and effectively learn and then start, making value on their project. So
yeah. No, that's a great one. I will second. I completely agree with you. When I get asked, what do you think the next big technology is? My answer currently is always, I don't care what's next. I want people to use the things that exist now. We have so much cool technology that is hardly even getting implemented as much as it could. And then two, what you said, the integration of that data, like scanners are getting fast, drones are out there, all this stuff, imagery is happening. You have 360 cameras, but then we get back and there's those silos of like individual platforms do individual things and the data doesn't talk to each other. And I think that biggest area for improvement, I agree with you, is the ways that that data gets used and integrated, and we throw back out the buzzword of AI, but I tell people, I'm like, man, I just imagine a software that takes all that data in, the point clouds, the images, and you treat it like Chat GPT, where you don't have to go in there and go find a measurement you're looking for or identify. You just ask the software, how many windows are in this building? And it just answers it. And then similar to Chat GPT, right, is it's not just a query of like, here's the amount of doors, but then you could continue to ask it questions. And as long as it has data of imagery or numbers, or, you can continue to converse with the data and get more things. And I think we just have to have more companies focused on that, right? Inspiring more companies to realize the impact that this data can have. And then look at, I look at, so many other industries, right, have thousands of developers working on social media platforms or video games, or I'm like, if we could get some of that talent, which there is some, but if we could get more of that talent inspired to come make an impact in the built environment, I think there's unlimited amounts of possibility.
Right, 100%. Something you mentioned earlier too, there's a huge optimization problem in the industry. So like we have enough software, we have enough technology, it's there, but it happens so often where people are in a platform and they say, oh, I didn't realize this button actually did everything that I need and want the program to do, and they just didn't know about that button.
Yeah.
So it also comes back to, like you said, just tell me what I can do now. The training piece is huge. So, it's not good enough to just have good tech. You gotta take it to that next level of connecting the people to the tech.
Yeah. I recently have been saying, I really think that the demand for all these technologies is going to outpace our industry's ability to perform them. Because of the resource issue and the personnel issue, and really the lack of training and education opportunities. When you look at, if we talk about some of the individual technologies, all the laser scanning, LiDAR, reality capture stuff, all of the scan into BIM models and BIM into digital twins and VDC process and all these technologies, right now it's all on the job learning. Like every company is having to just like adopt one thing at a time, and it's like this one guy in the company who adopts it, and then they train someone else, but then that person leaves, and we're not yet to the point, right, that like tons of universities are really deep in this. There really is a lack of expertise, yet I think that we're starting to see companies understand the value. So large enterprise companies are starting to say, we want this. And so the demand is growing, but I think it's outpacing the growth of the personnel in the industry growing these skill sets.
Yeah, I would agree. No notes.
Yep. But it's also why I love talking about it, because the more that we talk with people across different industries and understand like what they've seen and what they're experiencing in their journey, the more awareness we can build to it, and hopefully as a community start identifying how can we work toward solving some of those problems. Whether it is getting with universities and supporting, or whether it's, people branching out and creating, educational or training material or consulting.
Right. And you nailed it right there, as a community, right? Yeah. So there's something to be said. I mean, of course, for the great work that you've been doing with RCN, and there you have a ton of resources, which done a tremendous job at, like, one, building that community, which then two extends to the rest of the industry with education and awareness. But it's also, like a call to action for, I would say, contractors and tech providers, right? Like, build community between each other. So we only get better together.
Yep. Yep. The collaboration that can come from it, right? People helping each other, because that's the other hard part is, there's so many technologies and solutions. You have to also end up relying on partnerships and collaboration and working with other people. Because for one company to get in and do everything and, dig into AI and start robotics, it's just kind of unrealistic
Can't do
too.
it alone. Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about, some of your role. Where did that lead into? So you were doing the innovation role and then you started working for yourself, correct?
Yeah, I did. Basically got tired of the big corporate gig, wanted to change, and had always at some point wanted to try my own thing, which ended up being Erin Khan Consulting, so I wasn't too creative with it.
Hey,
with
it
the
works.
name. But essentially just doing more of the same that I have been. So let's see, started at the beginning of 2023, and I do two main things. So one is supporting contractors with finding the right tech solutions and scaling them up. And two is also supporting startups with a variety of things. All startups are a little bit different, but helping them solve specific problems or challenges that they're facing.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's been really cool.
Yeah. Okay. What's been the most surprising thing since starting to work for yourself?
Oh, surprising.
I love the entrepreneur stories.
Yeah. What is surprising?
Or if you can't think of surprising, most difficult.
Yeah. Let's see. I guess what's different is that I do wear every hat.
Yeah.
Pretty much. So that, there's no insurance department. There's no legal department.
Nope.
It's me. I am the department.
Yes.
So that's been a fun shift, but not necessarily a bad one.
Yeah.
So I think I enjoyed the different challenges that come with it. I think one of the other things that has been challenging is like balancing various workloads or projects and initiatives. So I can't do everything.
It's also just you. Yeah.
Yeah. And I am the type of person that gets excited about all the cool stuff going on in the industry. So knowing when to say no is pretty tough.
Yeah, that's true. It is a hard thing to do, and yet a powerful thing to do when you realize, what to say yes, what to say no, and you kind of find your lane. That's awesome. Right. Well, I'm glad it's going well. What, I'm sure there's many different projects or clients or things you've worked with, but since starting to work for yourself, what's a project or a technology or something that you've got to dive into that would be an exciting project you've worked on?
There's quite a few. So one that I'll just generally mention was working with a tech provider, not necessarily a startup, but think about more of like an old school solution. Think about like Windows 2000 era type of technology, and saying like, hey, this isn't modern enough for today's builder. We need to essentially rip this apart and rebuild it and repackage it and deploy it for today's builder and tomorrow and the future of the industry. So helping give feedback on like, okay, here's exactly what the process flow should be, or just working on different features. I love beta testing. So being able to beta test and give feedback on redevelopment of the platform was pretty fun.
That's cool.
So that's a past project. And then something else that was rewarding. So I work with, it doesn't really matter the size of the contractor. Sure. It's more so like what they're focusing on. But working with specialty trades or smaller shops on tech adoption and training them on specific tools, and like just seeing the impact is super rewarding. So like a little bit of Bluebeam training, let's say, goes a long way for a small mom and pop shop that's trying to just get more estimates out or put more bids out. So
that's very cool. That that's kind of a unique angle, that I think that could be very important and impactful to the industry because, a lot of companies are out trying to sell the big firms on, buy this whole new package. And there's some consulting firms out there that try to do training and stuff, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of people that go, seek out and try to just even, again, this goes back to like that whole innovation and improvement, right? Getting 1% better every day. Well, what if we can help all the trades get 1% better or 5% better? All of that can impact our industry in a big way when we keep talking about the fact there's a lack of people getting in and we're needing to improve process. So that's awesome. Awesome to see you helping.
Yeah. There's so much opportunity for transformation and improvement. So yeah, now's a good time to get into construction tech.
It is.
Yeah.
Another topic I want to touch on and just have you give some insight on, you are a part of a Women in Construction Technology focus. I'd love for you to tell a little bit about the organization and kind of the focus there.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for bringing it up. So Women in Construction Tech, WCT for short, was started by a few women in venture capital and focusing on construction technology, saying, hey, we can fill up a table of women in construction tech, but what about a room? Like, how do we get our community going? So by just having that conversation of women at a table, it's like, hey, if we bring ourselves together and start to build this community, we can empower ourselves, create connections with each other, help promote each other professionally and, in our longer term careers. So that was kind of the spark that behind WCT. So it's been around for a few years. What really makes WCT different is that it's a global community. So it's not just in LA or, San Francisco or somewhere local. It's throughout. So I don't have the list of countries off the top of my head. But yeah, check out our website. There's a link on there to join. It's open to anybody who wants to join to support women in construction technology and build the community. And we do put on events with our local chapters to help bring women together. So the mission and vision is basically connect each other, build community, and help promote ourselves professionally. So yeah, it's
very cool.
Been a great group. I have loved getting to know the entire team there. I'm the operations director, and we're currently working on establishing a few more initiatives in the future. So keep an eye out, more to come for sure.
Very cool.
Yeah. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, of course. I love finding other, communities. And, we've had a focus on a women's panel at our conference every year. I love trying to give a space for the women in the industry to share some of their stories and what some of the challenges are, knowing that AEC is very male-dominated industry. Yeah, it's cool to find those other organizations. In fact, I'd love to follow up on that. Maybe we can give a highlight over to them.
Appreciate it, Matt. Thanks.
Of course. Let's see. That's most of my questions. I'm looking through the very end here.
I'm like, well researched. Yeah.
Really, I think the wrapping up question that I always like to ask. You've had quite a career journey. You've gone from the entry of construction into innovation, and we are trying to impact both sides of people entering the industry, but also people that are in the industry, and we talk a lot about technology. If you were to give some advice to either of those sides, just some career advice, some things that you would leave them with as they're thinking about their journey ahead, whether it's their mindset or considering tech, what would you leave them with? Yeah.
Let's see. For those entering, construction is cool. I promise. It's super cool. So there are so many different roles as well. So if you're in the field and maybe you don't like the field, there are like 1,000,001 different things in the back office that are totally interesting and dynamic and exciting. So there are so many different facets to this industry. So if you come into it, you don't like one piece of it, explore a little bit more or explore a lot more, because there are just so many opportunities. Maybe the construction side isn't for you. Maybe you're more into being on the engineering side or owner's rep, or I don't know. There's so many opportunities. So it's super cool. I promise. And then
Yeah.
also for people who are like in the industry too, I think just kind of remember that as well, and that the industry's also always evolving. So I can't count the number of times that I've seen job postings for like director of data or artificial intelligence or, you know, plug in some other role that I'm like, wow, I never would have dreamt that up 10 years ago
Yeah.
for construction. So these are things that we can define ourselves. So if there's something that, you know, you want to explore, be passionate about, and bring to the industry, try it. Go ahead and do it, because we are the ones that are creating this evolution. So if it seems a little stale, or you're maybe challenged with some other things, just with the industry in general, there's always a way to make a positive change.
Yeah.
So maybe that's a little too optimistic, I know.
No, I
but,
completely agree with you. You know, I did it myself, and I've seen other people do it, right? Where you might be in a role that you don't love, and then you find something that interests you, that you can actually get excited about, and you get passionate about it. And the moment you find a role that you can be passionate about, you have the ability to change your career, because the difference of staying in a role that you really don't like that much, and then the difference of finding something you can be passionate about, you pay attention to it, you dive into it, you want to learn more about it, you're researching it, and you educate yourself so much that you become that person. And when you talk about these roles that you're seeing come up in the industry, right? Who's going to be the director of an AI?
Yeah.
Well, nobody went, you know, it's going to be whoever sat and played with it enough to learn and to integrate and to walk in and say like, hey, I can help do this thing. And it's the same thing that I've seen with laser scanning and drones and BIM, is that I didn't go to school to become a laser scanning expert. It got set in my hands, and I got excited about it and learned and trialed and played. And if you do that for a couple years, you're the person that could be, you know, taking that manager role. And going back to like our resource issue and the growth of these technologies, people that get excited about them today will be the managers of it in just a few years. Because today, if someone has 3-4 years of experience, they're pretty experienced in these new technologies. So if you start today, that'll be you in a few years, you know? So I completely agree with you.
Reminds me, my laptop is a little over 4 years old. And I'm like, oh man, it's a dinosaur in tech years.
It changes quick.
Yeah,
it changes quick.
Just a few years for technology, but yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story. Hopefully it gives some inspiration to those that are out there considering a role in construction, or another woman in the industry looking for a community to connect with, or someone in the industry that wants a change. Hopefully it will inspire them to think about the things we left them with, and I'm sure it won't be the last time they hear from you at some other level in the RCN community. So thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, appreciate it, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
All right, we'll see you again soon.